I'm Melissa Dawson, host of LPTV. Today we'll be interviewing Howard Wooldridge, co-founder of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. So Howard, tell us a little bit about LEAP and how you became involved as a co-founder.
Well, 5 of us got together in 2002. In fact, this week, March 16th was our birthday. We're 7 years old. We came together online, and after a period of a few months, we were able to put the organization together and start us on the road to educating Americans as to the failure of current drug policy. LEAP is an educational organization. We mostly go to Rotaries, Kiwanis, Lions Clubs, put on a 20-minute presentation to educate Americans as to the failure of current policy and why, at the end of the education process, we would want Americans to believe that it is much safer, more ethical, and for a lot of reasons, to stop selling these dangerous drugs off sidewalks and put them in a state-regulated store. And to that end, we have now 11,000 members. They're police officers, judges, prosecutors. Anyone who's basically drawn a paycheck to make America drug-free is eligible to join, plus our supporters.
Why do you think the war on drugs has maintained public support through so many years and so many various administrations?
Well, the war on drugs, as a phrase, was chosen by President Nixon for a good reason. When you use the phrase war, people think you can win a war. And there's victories along the way, and it was a brilliant move by Mr. Nixon to basically implement a policy which is simple prohibition. Many people know that 100 years ago you could walk in any pharmacy in America and buy any of these drugs, whether it's heroin, cocaine, marijuana. All of this was available legally, and there wasn't any such thing as a drug crime. But we learned, our grandparents learned in 1933 with the failure of alcohol prohibition, that you don't want to tell the world you're starting a new program of prohibition. So he used that war on drugs moniker and phrase to give the impression to the country that eventually we could make America drug-free. And so Americans have clung to the hope of this drug-free America that our politicians have been telling us about, because everyone wants to have their children not be in contact with these dangerous drugs, with these drug dealers. And so it sounds really good, and they've been very patient now, almost 40 years of serious drug war efforts, over $1 trillion spent. However, the good news is that now Americans understand, as President Obama said a couple of years ago, the war on drugs has been an utter failure. And the polls now backed it up to the 76th percentile. So we now believe that America is ready to hear something besides more drug war.
Who do you really think benefits from our drug policies?
Well, first and foremost, the people who are involved in the drug trade. According to the United Nations, worldwide sales of illegal drugs approaches between 300 and 500 billion, about 8% of world trade. So certainly the makers and the smugglers of these drugs are making huge amounts of money. Secondly, in terms of money, my profession is employing 1 police officer in 12 as a narcotics officer, for example. We have hundreds of thousands of extra prison guards being employed in order to hold the 2.3 million people in prison, more people in prison than any other country in the world, both in raw numbers and per capita. In my opinion and my best information, another industry which profits from this policy of prohibition is your pharmaceutical industry. Worldwide pill sales are about 640 billion, and everyone knows that marijuana is a wonderful medicine that you should be able to grow in your backyard for free, and you can stop spending, or the governments can stop spending actually millions, billions of dollars on these store-bought medicines, which could be replaced by simply allowing Americans to grow the medicine in their backyard, as Thomas Jefferson did. Those are your major moneyed interest in that. And of course, past the money interest, there's a sizable number of Americans who oppose changing the prohibition approach to dangerous drugs for moral reasons.
Can you explain how much the war on drugs has really cost the United States?
Well, since its basic inception about 40 years ago, governments, local, state, and federal, have spent a little over now $1 trillion to try to make America drug-free. That has been the cost to the taxpayers. However, the social costs are also huge. We have had 39 million Americans arrested on drug charges, which certainly lowers their ability to make a living. We've had fathers and mothers taken away from their children and put in prison for either weeks at a time or years at a time, decades at a time. This has not been good for the social fabric of the families in America. We've seen neighborhoods decimated by the gunfire, as drug dealers are selling these things off street corners and shooting each other to sell off all 4 street corners. And so this has certainly lowered the quality of life, especially in our inner cities. Certainly, average Americans have suffered a horrendous rise in crime rates, felony crime rates. When I was a detective, for example, about 80% of the people I arrested for breaking into private homes were people needing the $200 a day to support their crack habit. So every year we had many, many dozens of residents in my township in Michigan, where I was a police officer, suffer because of a home invasion. So this, again, it reduces the quality of life for all Americans across the board, as we don't feel so secure going up to an ATM at night because we think somebody might rob us. So all of these factors have been part of the costs involved with this modern prohibition. And as I like to always ask people when this comes up, can anyone name a benefit or a positive outcome of this modern prohibition?
Can you describe for us what your ideal drug policy would really look like?
My ideal drug policy would be, as a starting point for discussion, give these dangerous drugs, and they are dangerous, some of them are fatal if used improperly. I would give these dangerous drugs the same rules and regulations we give to the second deadliest drug in America, which is alcohol, minus outside advertising. Several states across the country have what we call ABC stores, where they take their hard liquor, put them in a store, carefully controlled by the state, regulated by police officers, make sure they don't sell to underage people, etc. These drugs are checked by the FDA, the alcohol is checked by the FDA, make sure it's pure. And I would like to see the same regulations for these other drugs. I would want a government official to make sure that my cocaine would be pure, my heroin is pure, my amphetamines are pure, my marijuana doesn't contain anything besides pure marijuana. We need a packaging system where the consumer would know, as we do with tobacco today and alcohol, what the dangers are of consuming this particular drug. So as I say, as a starting point for discussion, same rules as alcohol.